Hi guys, welcome to my Aiyima A70 D-Class TPA 5255 based amplifier review. This is one of new breed amplifiers that are using Texas Instrument PFFB technology, which stands for Post Filter Feedback Loop technology. Let's start with what's in the box. I'm testing this amplifier with new power supply. It's a GaN based power supply that's supposed to be even more efficient than the older ones. This is the recommended and the most powerful power supply. It's 48 volts and 5 amperes output, which gives us 240 watts of output power. In the box looks like this. It protects the amplifier quite well, although as you can see mine had some hits along the road. In the box we have power supply, power brick, we have amplifier. It's quite well protected, and we also have a short manual inside. The most interesting thing about the manual is the table with specs. As you can see, for that power brick for 4 ohms, we have 185 watts maximum output, and for 8 ohms load we'll have 105 watts output power, which is quite a lot for such a small fry. I'm not giving you the numbers for output power with 10% THD, because that's basically meaningless. You won't be listening to anything so loud and so distorted. Yeah, the usual frequency response data, total harmonic distortion and noise. This is looking very nice, and signal to noise ratio, it's also over 116 decibels, which is very good. This amplifier has already been measured on Audio Science Review by IMHO, so you can see some additional data there. All in all, it's measuring very well. But this one is sporting this new technology. It's called new technology, but basically it was included in TPA 32 series of D-Class integrated amplifiers since the beginning. But previously, I don't know why, but no one was using this. So what is this new technology? Basically, the D-Class amplifiers, their frequency response is load dependent. That basically means that if you have like, let's say 8 ohm loads, if you have 8 ohm impedance speakers, then the treble output may be a bit too high. If you have like 4 8 ohm load, the treble output may be too low. I'll try to draw this for you. No, it will be a special effects version. Okay, so if on this axis we would have the amplitude, and on this axis we would have frequency, and let's mark this magical 22 kilohertz of our listening range, yeah, like that. So the ideal frequency response would be flat like that and falling down after 22 kilohertz. Basically, this what happens here wouldn't be very interesting for us, because the theory says we can't hear that anyway. So the D-Class load dependency means that for speakers with about 6 ohms or something like that, you'd be close to this curve. But if your speakers would be 8 ohms, you would have something like that. So basically, the treble would be a little bit exaggerated, a little bit depending on the speakers. For the 8 ohms load, on the other hand, you would have something like that. The more difficult load, the less treble. The easier load, the more treble. Which basically means that for some people, the D-Class amplifiers would be either too bright or either too dark, lacking treble extension. But what's the PFFB? The PFFB, post-filter feedback loop, in a principle is similar to what I've already reviewed in the Aiyima A70. So basically, this is original Texas white paper, by the way, very interesting thing to read. You're getting the fraction of the output voltage behind the filters to the input of the TPA amplifier. The idea is to use this as an error signal. So the amplifier will be able to correct the output basing on the actual output that's affected by the speaker. This means in theory that the amplifier should be able to correct the problems with frequency distortions caused by different loads. And in the lower part of the white paper, we can see the comparison between standard configuration and the configuration with PFFB. And for TPA 55, it means that with PFFB, we are getting more like additional 5 decibels in signal to noise ratio. So basically, the gap between signal and noise will be 5 decibels larger. And the similar numbers we can see for dynamic range. With PFFB enabled, TPA 55 will be sporting additional 5 decibels in dynamic range. And the same goes for total harmonic distortions. As you can see, the line for PFFB is lower than the line for the standard configuration. And how lower? The difference is in range between, let's say, 5 decibels and 6 decibels. That's a lot. That's quite a big difference for just enabling the technology that was included in TPA chips from the beginning. Okay, so I've told you the specs for this amplifier. I've told you about the PFFB, so you can understand why it's important. Now let's take a look inside. Maybe rather let's take a look at the outside of the amplifier first. In the front we have a volume pot that doubles its function as a power on switch and also switch for the input selection. Short press powers the amplifier. When in powered state, short press will change the inputs from RCA to XLR. The amplifier remembers the last state of the selected input, and the long press will power the amplifier down. On the back we have speaker outputs. As you can see, these are larger and more solid than usually found on the cheaper TPA 50 to 55 implementations. We have power input socket here. We have our RCA inputs here. We have subwoofer output. And the first interesting thing is that we are able to regulate the frequency cutoff for the subwoofer output, which is not very common. You can usually, with powered subwoofers, you can also do that on the subwoofer side, but the interesting thing here is that you can also do the cutoff here. The next interesting thing is this small switch. It's for selecting RCA plus 3 decibels amplification. The idea is that the input signal from XLRs found here will be higher voltage, thus making it louder compared to RCAs. If you're using both inputs at the same time for different sources and you would like to switch between them, then if you will not engage this switch, you'll have quite a big volume difference between these two types of inputs. So my advice would be to leave it on for 3 decibels, for 3 additional decibels of input signal level if you're using both inputs and you're switching between them. The next really good and novelty thing on this class of amplifiers is 12 volts trigger. This is a standard professional solution for HiFi equipment, because using this trigger inputs you're able to power on and off devices remotely using the other device. So for example, if you would be powering your, I don't know, digital to analog converter, your DAC will be able to power all other necessary equipment on. And if you'll be switching off your digital to analog converter, your DAC will be able to power off every other connected equipment. What I'm lacking here, what's also found on professional, maybe not professional, but HiFi or high-end equipment, is another 12 volt socket for trigger output, because you should be able to daisy chain these, because you may be using 2 of these, maybe 3 of these, or maybe you'd be wanting to pass the trigger on to some other device, like for example, I don't know, TV, projector, or maybe automated curtains that would be closing when you're powering on your audio equipment. Okay, so I've covered the speaker outputs, I've covered the power input, the RCAs. Yeah, that's pretty all. Okay, so the case is pretty solid. It's not very thick metal, but you'll see that in a second. I really like this additional shapes on the sides with red mesh inside. This looks nice, this looks modern, and gives some nice twist on the look of the device. On the bottom we have venting holes, and as you can see, I've removed some screws. We have 2 screws that are mounting the heatsink block inside to the case. The case works as a part of this heatsink. On the front we have 3 LED indicators for the input selection and for the power state. Okay, in order to disassemble the device, you need to remove the volume pot. You need to unscrew the hex nut that's found here, and I've already removed it. And you have to remove 4 hex screws from the back and 2 hex screws from the bottom. So as you can see, I left only 1 here. So let's take that out, and that's it. We're able to disassemble the amplifier. So the front plate is quite nice, it's quite thick, solid. The sides are not as thick as the front plate, but they are still okay. Let's put that in here. Yes, and you can see 2 sets of rails for PCBs. As for PCBs, I've covered that in my first look video. What can I add now is a couple of informations. The first one is that, as you can see, we have NE5532 operational amplifiers here, a pair of them. And I've asked Aiyima what they are used for, because I was afraid that they may be in a path signal. Afraid because this is pretty basic operational amplifier, and basically anything else is better. Although this one also works fine. So these are used to convert single-ended input to fully balanced input for TPA JIT. So basically the whole construction inside is fully balanced, and the native way of getting audio input would be using XLRs, which I really love, because these will give you better dynamic range, better transparency, and better airiness. But if you're going to use single-ended inputs, the signal internally will be converted to balanced, which is a very nice thing. Okay. We have some Nippon chemical capacitors here and here, and these are 2200 microfarads. rated for 63 volts, which basically gives us 4,400 microfarads of the power reservoir for the amplifier. As you can see, we have two PCBs. They are connected with these bridges. You can disassemble them, but in order to do that, you need to unscrew all of the inputs screws here and remove backplate. But it's not necessary for replacing op-amps. The stock op-amps that you're getting with amplifier are, let's try, yes, Texas Instruments NE5532 operational amplifiers. I think these are probably real, but in order to get the most from your new amplifier, I would recommend to replace them with something better. What's better? Usually my recommendation would be for Class A amplifiers, but we have some problems here. This is LC2 Acliam module. As you can see, it just doesn't fit. It's too high. Then we have LC5s. LC5s are even higher. Then we also have staccato amps, and staccato amps are also too high. I have just one. I don't have two of them that could possibly fit inside. Yeah, these, they are placed horizontal, but I'm afraid that there would still be some problems with heat, ventilation, and with placing two of them next to each other. So basically, we cannot use discrete Class A op-amps here. Yes, I know that there are some wired adapters that would allow us to place them horizontally, but if you take a look, there's just no place for that. And Class A runs hot. If we would place them horizontally, two of them inside in here, and then we would close this with the metal cage on the sides like that, and in the front, there would be no way to dissipate the heat. So I wouldn't advise that. I wouldn't even, don't try this at home. Just simply. Don't do that. Don't try this at home. But we have some options. We have some options for IC operational amplifiers. I've tried a couple of op-amps from my collection. My highest recommendation, since we cannot use Class A discrete operational amplifiers, would go for OPA 828 on adapters. Then I would recommend OPA 627 on adapters. Then I would recommend OPA 1612 or 1656. In this line. Yeah. OPA 828 are very precise, are very airy and transparent. They have no digital metallic sound signature, so these are my best choices, and you can see them inside right now. The next in line, OPA 627. That's the previous generation top Texas Instruments model, and they will give you a tiny bit less detail and transparency, but they will give you some nice organic bass and treble. I think the sound from this is usually slightly V-shaped, but this would be my second choice. And my third, but still a very good choice, would be Exequo. OPA 1612 or OPA 1656. So we still have some options. Okay, so finishing with op-amps and moving to capacitors, we have some nice LNRC MIG2 capacitors here and over there inside. We have some inductors that are looking like TDK and they're inside. I don't know if you can see them, the gray blocks here. On the other side, we have the main TPA amplifier underneath the heatsink, so that's very nice. And the heatsink also transfers the heat to the casing. because it's screwed to the case. As you can see, it doesn't have any heat conducting paste. You can add something like that if you want to, but I think it's not a critical thing here, because it's not a CPU that's running very, very hot, and we want to shave off every single degree of temperature of it. We also have some screened shielded parts inside of this Aiyima shield, but I haven't tried to look inside what's inside, because it looks like it's soldered to the board, so I wouldn't like to damage it. It's not the type that just pops off when you use your fingernail. Okay, so that's about the internal build. All in all, I like the build inside, I like the quality of the parts inside, I like the fact that we can change the operational amplifiers. I highly recommend you to replace the default stock NE5532 with something better, because it really changes the sound in a good way. It sounds well in a stock form, but if you can tune the sound, you can make it sound even better with this small replacement. That's something that I would highly recommend. Now let's pause the recording. I'll add the screw back and we'll continue to the other parts of review. Okay, we're back, so let's move away the op-amps. Let's do some free space here, and now let's talk about the tests and about the sound quality. First thing, the measurements. You can see the audio measurements on the Audio Science review site. What I've measured here is the power usage using my Tuya smart plug. When idle, it was consuming 10 watts of power. When playing the music quite loud, it was consuming between 12 and 14 watts of power. So it's very efficient. I was doing the tests using not only my bookshelf speakers, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but also my Martin Logan Ascend 1 electrostat speakers. And they are difficult load. And during that part of testing, the amplifier got warm, and I've measured the temperature. The temperature was ranging between 36 degrees centigrade on top and 39 degrees centigrade on the bottom, near the heatsink, internal heatsink. It does get warm to the touch, but only when using difficult loads like my Aston speed. Well, they are difficult load because in the treble region they are dropping down to 1.2 ohms. So they are difficult load because it's very close to shortening the speaker outputs just with a piece of wire. Okay, so moving on to the associated equipment, what I was using in my tests. I didn't want to make it easy to the device. I wanted it to play using the same rules as the big boys that I'm testing. Also, I didn't want to create any bottlenecks for the amplifier. I didn't want to test it with the speakers that would be too bad to show the full possibilities that this unit is able to give us. So, what I've used. First, the source. And my source was HTPC computer, fully integrated, fully passive PC with no mechanical parts inside, based on the 12th generation of Intel i7 processor. It's completely passive, it doesn't have any mechanical parts inside, it runs completely quiet and silent, and it's using linear power supply. Then the signal, the information, the data stream goes to GoStart X26 Pro digital to analog converter, and sorry, my mistake. The signal is actually going through USB connector to SyncServe SU6 unit, and the SyncServe SU6 unit is connected by I2S to Gastard, and Gastard is also using external 10 MHz clock. On the other hand, I was also using the semi-breve Asahi Kasei 4499AX based digital to analog converter, the small device that I've already reviewed in one of my other videos. It's quite cheap and it's an excellent source. It's absolutely punching way above its class, its weight. So these two were the sources for this testing. Okay, the wires, the cables. For interconnects, I was using fake AudioQuest Dragon XLR interconnects. They'll be having their own review. In short, these are best XLRs that I've heard in my life. I don't know if they actually are fake. For the speaker cables, I was using again fake Red Dawn, Nordost Red Dawn, and AudioQuest K2 and AudioQuest Dragon speaker cables. So these are the best cables that I have here. They allow the equipment to really shine, and there were no bottlenecks in the setup for this amplifier. As for the speakers, I've tested this amplifier with my set of DALI icons Model 2. I've tested this with DALI Opticons Mark 1. I've tested this with Martin Logan Motion 15s, 35 XTE speakers, and at the end of the test I've used this small fry, this Aiyima A70 to power my fully blown Martin Logan Ascent 1 electrostat speakers. I thought it would be a fun exercise because this is a very small and very compact device, and Ascents are like, I think they are 170 centimeters tall, these towers. Yeah. And they are really hard to drive, but I was quite positively surprised, but more on that later. Okay, so that was about the testing equipment, and now we're moving to the sound qualities. Starting from the bottom up using my regular scenario, the bass. The bass is very natural, the bass is very nice and extends very low. What got my attention is the drums. The drums sound very natural, the drums sound very detailed. So that was the first positive surprise, the first thing that caught my ears. I think there may be a small amount too much of the mid bass. It's not exactly bleeding into mids, but to my liking, I would like to have it just a little smaller amount. It's something that you can easily EQ. You can tune the sound using some kind of parametric equalizer, but it wasn't like it was bleeding into mids, so it wasn't bad. But to my taste, I'd like to have just a tiny little bit less amount of mid bass, but it was a very good quality. As I said, the bass goes really low. It has this nice good rumble when listening to your, I don't know, techno or music, etc. The cutoff frequency, I will confirm that in the description of the video when I get the response, but this does not work as a redirect of the bass frequencies from the main speaker tabs. So basically, you're setting the frequency that will affect only the subwoofer output, and my tests, my ears are telling me that the speaker tabs are always full range. So that's some additional info about the bass. Another thing very positive about the bass, the piano. The piano sounds very natural, and the lower notes played on piano sound also very natural. So this was very nice and very pleasant surprise for such a small device. Because, you know, usually people tend to associate the D-class amplifiers with either very rolled in treble region sound or with thin metallic and very bright sound at the top. This one doesn't sound as D-class amplifier at all. Okay, so moving to the mids. Emotion in vocals. If you know the Sorry by Halsey, the song can sound just good on some equipment, and on some equipment you can actually feel the emotion in her voice. This is not something that you can measure using frequency response or waterfall graphs. This is something that sometimes you can hear using good equipment, and sometimes you cannot hear that using just okay equipment. This amplifier really was able to convey that emotion. So that was another very good surprise for me. Okay, the mids were full-bodied. I really liked the female and male vocals. The next thing is they didn't sound thin. As I said, many people are associating D-class with a thin sound without body. That's not the case. This sounds full-bodied. One more thing that I should mention at the beginning. I wasn't doing the listening sessions with NE5552. There was no point. They just were replaced, and the whole testing was done with OPA 828. Because, you know, there's little point in doing the critical listening session with having something that I consider a bottleneck still tucked inside the amplifier. So all testing was done using the best possible operation amplifier that I could fit inside this case. Okay, getting back to the mids. Another song, Devil in Your Eye by Mumford & Sons. This song, this is something that I'm using to test the timbre of the vocals. In this case, it was very natural. All the details, all the small sounds that are happening in the back of the song were present there, and the leading vocal was very, very good and very nice. Another song that I'm using for testing the amplifiers is And So It Goes by Jennifer Warnes. I'm testing with this song two things. The first one is sibilance, because this song can sound sibilant on some equipment, but it should not sound sibilant on good equipment. It should border on sibilance, but it should be not sibilant. It was perfectly fine here. Another thing that I'm able to test with that song is the detail in the mids. The detail in the mids can be tested using the vibration in her words, the small differences in the frequency of the sounds, like for example in word silence that can be heard at 1 minute and 47 seconds. You'll know what I mean when you'll hear it. If you have a good equipment, you will be able to hear that these words are vibrating, that there are small changes, very small changes in frequency in this word. So that's something also very good. This vibration could be a little bit more detailed. I've heard the amps that are doing this better, but I've heard a whole lot of amps that do not convey this vibration at all. So this one does this. It could be slightly better, but it's very good right now. So all in all, very good and very natural vocals in the mid-range. Moving on to the treble. The treble has good extension, there is no roll-off, so PFFB seems to be working fine. There is no sibilance. The cymbals are sounding very good and natural. the string instruments and brass instruments all have the necessary detail and vibrations that you can hear in these kind of instruments. The treble is very delicate. Maybe I'd like to have a little bit more air at the top. I think it could use some additional transparency, some additional airiness at the top end. But that's just my taste. As I said, I like things open and spacious. It's very good in this regard, but it could be a little bit better. Okay, moving on to the detail. The detail is good. It's not on par with the best amplifiers that I measured, but it's the best for any Class D amplifier that I tested and heard so far. For example, if you listen to Hymn to the Fallen by John Williams, that's from Saving Private Ryan soundtrack, and if you listen to this recording, you'll be able to hear the inhales of the orchestra playing trumpets and other brass instruments. So that's something very nice. Also, in the choir of the voices, you'll be able to discern the separate voices. The choral part of the track will not sound as sung by one voice only. So that's something very good. And that brings us to scene and imaging. This amplifier has a very good center image. It easily gets the sound of the speakers on the left and the right side. So you're not hearing the sounds coming from the speakers, but you're hearing the scene, layered scene in front of the speaker and speakers. And if you close your eyes, you won't be able to point the speakers with your fingers unless you remember where they are standing. So that's also another positive thing. So positioning on the left and right sides is good. You do have some depth. It's not the best amp in the depth and height regions, but again, it's the best D-class amplifier that I've heard with this layered information. So that's something really surprisingly good. Again, I guess that the PFFB is working. Another thing, I think we finished the structured part of the review. Some additional notes that I took. It has great dynamics. The orchestral swings convey a lot of dynamics. You can see it easily handles going from the quiet passages to the very loud ones. Again, it doesn't sound like a D class at all. It sounds more like an AB class. It doesn't sound like A class yet, but it does sound very close to AB. And I'm 100% sure that if I would make you do ABX tests, so you would be blindly listening to the sound and I'll be switching the amplifiers, you would never tell that this is D-class. And that's something new for me, because I really like D-class and I'm following the developments that are happening there, that were happening there for the past few years, because it evolves rapidly. And yes, some of the D-class amplifiers were rolled off. For example, the Aiyima A07, the original amplifier that started the rage for DPA 5255, for me, it was so rolled off that I've sold it. It measured very well on Audio Science Review, but I've listened to it. I've tried changing, replacing op-amps, and still I've sold it. But this one, this is completely new story. It doesn't sound like D-class at all. It has good natural timbre. The voices and instruments are full-bodied. They do not sound thin. And also, this is the first, for me, this is the first D-class amplifier, the small toy that I would call musical. It actually, in my notes, it's musical in capital with exclamation mark. listen once again. Listen to the hymn of the fallen. Listen to the changes in the melodic line. They are not only precise, but they are very fluid. They are flowing with the music. The same goes for Sylvia Hotel. Listen to the guitars, listen to the strings, listen to the singer's voice. It's just flowing. At some point, as I did, you stop doing the critical listening session and you're just enjoying the music. Another thing that surprised me, again, for the first time, this is the first D-class amplifier that I can honestly say that conveys emotion. That's all other amplifiers that I've tested and heard so far are precise, are good, some of them were musical, but this one is able to convey emotion, and that's not something very common also within big boys. Not every A or AB class amplifier is able to make you feel the emotion in music. So I think that's the highest praise I said so far, because music is basically all about the emotion. You're listening to music to feel the emotion, and this little guy is able to do that. Okay, last few notes. Timbre, very good timbre. Good example for timbre, Topsy by Dick Hyman. The music just flows. You can hear and feel the ambience. You can feel the timbre of the instruments, and these are very natural sounding. It's also very transparent, because I've noticed, as I've said, I was using two digital to analog converters as a source. Gastard, which is based on Sabre DAC, and Semi Breve, which is based on Asahi Kasei Delta Sigma converter. So basically, different digital to analog converters gave different traits to the sound via this amplifier. The Asahi Kasei gave this very good, very natural sounding vocals. So it's transparent and it conveys the traits from the digital to analog converter that acts as a source. Some additional things before I will finish that I got from listening to this amplifier connected to Martin Logan Ascent 1 electrostat speakers. So no free lottery tickets. It was playing in the same league with the big boys, and some additional things that I've noted when listening to this amplifier through the ultimate transparency test that I have. Basically, these are monsters. They show you everything, which can be a very good and very beautiful thing in your sound, but it can also be a very bad thing if the recording is done badly or if you have some problems in your chain. They will show you everything. So, using this, the imaging gets more three-dimensional, but electrostats are crazy in imaging, and I'm pretty sure that they would be able to do 3D holography picture from flat painting. So you're getting some additional depth and height information. PFFB seems to be really working, because electrostat speakers are very demanding and very difficult to load because of this heavy load in the treble region, which basically makes almost all but most powerful amplifiers sound like they would be rolled off in treble region. For example, you can see Kane Jazz here. Very good, excellent, superb tube amplifier. And there's no point in connecting that to electrostats, my electrostats, even if that Kane has 40 watts per channel output. It sounds muted and it sounds rolled off. And many of the solid state amplifiers, A-class, AB class amplifiers that I've tested so far, also have that problems with electrostats. Because 1.2 ohms in treble is basically like they would be playing into the shorter piece of cable. So the amplifier scales well. With Martin Logan's, there was no loss of treble, there was no loss of detail and airiness there. So PFFB seems to be working. seems to be correcting the problems caused by the difficult load. Strings instruments, bass instruments, all instruments that are depending on detail on these vibrations were amazing. This, again, it's a very small amplifier. It had no problems with driving through, and listen to that, through 30 centimeters wide bass drivers that are on the bottom of the Astons. The bass was deep, detailed, and rumbling. It remained good detail. It wasn't up to the par with the best amplifiers I tested, but it's not a fair comparison. You can get this one for $150 or something like that, depending on the sale price. So the comparison to amplifiers that are costing like $1,000 or $2,000–$3,000, it's not exactly fair. But it was okay in that company. It wasn't the best, but it got its strengths, and that's the first D-class amplifier I can tell something like that about. So, another example song for testing the details and holography. Listen to Dance of the Witches by John Williams from the CD with recording of City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. Listen to the details, listen to the placement, three-dimensional placement of different sounds and instruments. It's not a detail monster, but again, very high praise in the next sentence. I could live with it. I could have it connected with my electrostats, and I could surely live with it. When I was starting my testing, I was a bit skeptic about this because that's another from value priced D-class amplifiers. Although I've seen that it had some praise from other reviewers, but when I've heard Baba Yetu by Christopher Tin, I stopped my critical sessions. I thought that my notes are complete, and I just enjoyed the music. Okay, so the short summary. For now, it's the best budget, the Class D amplifier, the best Class D TPA 5255 implementation that I've heard so far. It beats the hands down all other amplifiers that I have tested, all the 4C amplifiers that I've tested, including the mono amplifiers, ZA3, for example. It beats hands down all previous iterations of Aiyima amplifiers, including A07 Pro, which was my best liked Aiyima amplifier so far. I have it down on the table. It has amazing value for the price. If I would point a couple of things that I'd like to be improved, is this some additional airiness and transparency at the top, and a little less of the mid-bass. Other than that, it's absolutely great overall value. It has great functionality, and it sounds great. Functionality, XLR inputs, cutoff frequency for subwoofer output and subwoofer output, and we have 12-volt trigger. I can see some guys using 3 of these as ultimate audio-video receiver, because you can just simply use them for fronts, backs, surrounds, center, and subwoofer, and connect them to your, I don't know, Blu-ray player or DTS decoder. Another thing that comes to my mind is I'll be using this little guy as a reference amplifier when I will be listening to the speakers that I'm buying sometimes, because I prefer to buy speakers used, because they have better value than they usually have been brought in, so I don't have to repeat that process back home, and the price is way lower than for the new speakers. And used speaker, I know it's the word used there, but it was just playing music. it was not like somebody used that speaker to dig a hole in the ground. So it's basically in exactly the same state as a brand new speaker. So I'll be getting this along. When I'll be buying something, I'll have this with me to test the speakers, because I know this little guy, and I know what it's capable of. So, amazing value for the price. Highly recommended. I think I'll sell other D-class value amplifiers that I have, and I'll keep just this one. When I was finishing my listening sessions last night, I stopped taking notes and I just started to listen to music. And that I think is the highest price, because it was about 1:30 AM, something like that. And I still felt the need, I still wanted to hear one more next track from this little guy. I think I might do a funny video connecting this one to my electrostat speakers and just taking a short video of them playing together, because it looks ridiculous. It's very small, it's very compact, and it was able to power electrostats just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you find it helpful, if it helped you make a decision, you're more than welcome to buy me a beer or something like that using supers, but that's not required in any way. If you have any questions, just ask them in the comments. I try to do the other reviews that are waiting in line as soon as possible, but you know, to do the review in a serious way, I need to do this in the late evening with a very quiet background, and I need to have everything prepared for the critical listening session. My notes, my room here, the cables, the connections, etc., etc. So I'll try to do them as soon as possible. I have 2 more days that I can use for recording them. So stay tuned. Thank you, guys. Oh god, it's almost 1 hour long. Sorry about that. See you soon.